He's got a worthless lieutenant.
Okay, we're reconvening as the Wicomico County Council with budget session for May 10th, 2017. Next item on the agenda is the volunteer fire and EMS. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, sir. Copies for everybody. Can't go anywhere without paper.
We have 4 chairs, and we can bring up more if you need them.
Yeah, we got.
I'll sit back here on the
Thank you, sir.
You want to bring a chair up, feel free to grab. You can grab this chair over here if you like. We'll use that. You want that?
We can bring up a chair.
Oh,
He said
You're-
back
you're
to
getting one.
supervisor.
Mike, sir. Seeing you.
Make sure you got a mic there when he's designed. Laura. I just sent it.
Mr. Winnison.
Here you, sir.
Good.
Mr. Stuff, you're older than I am. Is this your thing, Mr.
Not much there.
No, that's one. Sharon, this?
Yeah, we'll have to. Mr. Farlow, how are you, sir?
Doing all right.
We'll let you start.
Okay, I'm Ted Farlow,
When do you want to talk into that?
Chair of the Wicomico County Joint Firefighters Liaison Committee. What you have in front of you that you're looking through now is exactly, well, I shouldn't say exactly, there were 2 minor revisions to a date, but otherwise this is exactly what we presented to the county executive. The first 8 pages, and then there's some additional copies just for the county budget and his proposal that he's already sent to you. It's just so we would have it all for reference purposes in front of us. What we proposed, I'll go through that first. That was, I don't know how page 2 ended up at 2015, but let's go to page 3. This is what we requested for this year. Our fire grant was $100,000 per company. That was unchanged. Again, this is what we presented to the executive. The ambulance grant was to increase that to $100,000 per company. That was $45,000 per company, or $630,000 total. An increase of a total of $42,000 for the sinking fund. Our EMT grant was to increase that $100,000 per company. Again, this was what was requested, not what was included in the budget. Our workman's comp was $7,750 per company as estimated. LoSAP was $120,000. As you all are well aware, we're paying that at $10,000 per death, so that is a placeholder amount. Hopefully it comes in far less than that, because if we have that amount, that means we've had 12 deaths in our organization over the year. Respiratory protection at $2,785 per. $5,000 total for hepatitis. The decon units outside the city of Salisbury, 1 at Delmar, 1 at Sharptown, 1 at Parsonsburg. $6,000 total for maintenance and upkeep on them. Fire prevention was $5,000 total. The special ops is negotiated separate, but we'd included what was in the budget at $125,000. Below that, you will see our justification for each of these line items. I'll let you read that. I won't read all of it. The second paragraph, companies surrounding the city of Salisbury are already seeing increased call volume responding to the city and its surrounding area. The city is upholding its responsibility to continue services at the highest level, but they're now running 4, 5, and more calls at a time with 3 ambulances. That means that Parsonsburg, Hebron, Delmar, and Fruitland are running calls that are not in their service areas. Because of partnership agreements with other departments, including Pittsville and Mardell, are now running calls in or around the city because the paramedics from there are staffing other ambulances. So the trickle-down effect was to all areas of the county.
Are those EMS calls or all calls?
Well, those were indications for EMS calls with the provider account. We are seeing increases because at about the time the study was going on between the city and the county, there was a policy change that the city was now requesting additional resources from outside the county. So it does not include the fire calls in that, because in and around the time the budget was being presented and that process was being done with the study, that change was made. So some of those numbers aren't included in that. But yes, each fire call within the city of Salisbury Fire District now brings an additional company beyond the 3 that are currently within the corporate city limits of the city of Salisbury. So if it's on the east side of town, that is usually a Fruitland call. If it's on the south, or Parsonsburg, if it's on the south, it's Fruitland. North side is Delmar, and if it's to the west, it's Hebron. Honestly, from Pittsville, we've been to Fruitland twice in the last 3 months, and I don't recall a time that ever happened unless Dickie Carey had something on fire. So, and I say that not as a joke, it's because we're going deeper and deeper into our resources county-wide to cover the calls. We're used, in days past, that used to be something that's only for extraordinary events. Now, these are relatively the types of structure fires that we would have considered normal in years past. Sure.
On that note, I believe, and I can't speak for 2 of the companies, but 2 of the outlying companies, we've answered approximately about 20 calls going into the city as of this date under mutual aid
Okay.
for structure fires.
Structure, okay.
Yeah.
Are you?
Yes, go
are
ahead.
you- I
No,
mean,
go ahead.
I guess I want to talk about you touched on the death benefit a little bit, and I got Bert sitting right here, and I think the first time I met him, I literally, he mentioned this to me, so this has always stuck with me. So I know the county's taking that over now. From your perspective, this is a guaranteed benefit, a guaranteed death benefit. So maybe this is more of a question for Wayne in terms of funding it, in terms of how the county funds it, and maybe also how it's counted. Is there an issue in terms of, is that insurance, is that a benefit in terms of tax issues, or how is this being funded on the county end so that, as they raise here, to make sure we have enough money to fund it, because they're counting on it, and, for tax benefits and things like that?
It's paid directly out of the general fund, Mark.
Okay,
And the amount that is budgeted, it is basically budgeted just based on our experience over the past several years. So we estimate, and this is a little macabre, but we estimate the number of deaths that we may experience in the budget.
all right, so it's kind of more of a pay-go, it's not,
It's a pay-go.
so we're not building up an insurance fund to have kind of a, okay.
And we pay, the change that we made, I think 2 years ago, was that it's not a graduated payment now,
Yeah.
it's a $10,000 flat payment, irrespective of the age of the deceased individual. And that's a change that we made, I think, 2 years ago.
Yes.
To be a little more macabre, let's say there's more deaths than you anticipated, then you would come to us
I have
from
to come to you and ask
contingency.
for a transfer out of contingency.
Okay, just to clarify.
But I think the history on that was, we were paying an insurance company
Oh, yeah.
quite a bit of money every year.
This is a better deal.
And we investigated, and that goes back to when Dave Walston, I think, first brought that to us and said that, it'd be a lot less expensive if we went this way. And I think they did the research and we found that it was, so.
Well,
Exactly what happened.
Yeah.
well, Bert has been very, he was very clear, I think that was your goal, to make sure that was taken care of and guaranteed, and you did a great job advocating on behalf of
On
that.
the
So-
age, yes.
Oh, yeah, on the age, and about the graduated and just a 10,000 benefit, so he deserves credit for, for his very adequate representation of the
To paraphrase what he said before, he told you exactly what you thought about it.
Well, let me ask you this, for the benefit of the public, can you explain what that death benefit is? It's not a line of duty death, but it's a perk.
I wouldn't put it as a perk. It is a recognition of the time of service that a person has put in. And again, it's not a line of duty death benefit. Usually, the companies have that if it was a line of duty death, there are state benefits or federal benefits. Individual insurance companies kick in with that. That's not what this is for. This is for somebody who's put in a length of time in the fire service. They have provided service faithfully to the community throughout Wicomico County. And that benefit is there for their families, because obviously they don't get anything out of it, is the individual put in the time, but for the families to be, and for the fire company to be able to provide them with the burial and recognition that they deserve for their time in service, and that's what it's there for.
Now, is this what you're calling LoSAP?
That is what's called LoSAP. A true length of service awards program is actually something
It's like a
different.
monthly benefit.
That is a retirement benefit. When this was originally discussed, that was the committee it came under. So they were talking about a LoSAP benefit, which would have provided a defined benefit contribution pension. So they might have gotten $100, $200, $300, $500, whatever that amount would have been determined on a monthly stipend after their quote-unquote
service,
retirement date.
yes.
What was found at that time was, in order to get the members that were going to need it most, the ones that had put in the most amount of time, that it was going to be prohibitively expensive and probably exclude most of them, because it would have started on this date and then you would have had to put in 30 years. Well, somebody had already put in 50 years of service. Obviously, they're never going to touch that. So the death benefit was floated as an alternative to the LoSAP. But we continue to use the LoSAP because that's what the committee was set up as. So that is the death benefit.
And I know it was discussed at many county association meetings.
Yes, absolutely, but it hasn't been discussed publicly in this forum, so that's important to put on the record.
On the EMT grant,
Yes, sir.
you have here total 1,400, 1,400,000
Yes.
total.
That,
Is that for 7 stations?
no, that was, again, that was an increase of 1.4 million total. It would have been 2.8 million. That was including the city of Salisbury, remembering that this was the proposal to the executive. So we were already at 1.4 million, including what was being paid to the city of Salisbury, and that was a 1.4 million additional. That is not in this budget.
Oh,
in
that's
the
a
final form.
continuation of the increase 100,000 per company.
Correct.
Okay, I thought
Yes.
you were saying that
No,
was the
that
total.
was in the parentheses, and it just carried over to the next line.
Okay, so it's all 1 cent, increase 100,000 per company, 14 total.
$1.4 million total for the increase.
And it appears that the 200,000 that you had put in, it looks to me like
We're
it was kept at 100, is that correct?
We are still kept at the 100,
It was
yes.
kept at 100, yeah.
We can go ahead, and the reason that was, and it's explained further in here, is the amount of money that we're putting in from fundraise monies or other monies that we're requiring from the county that should be for other things, the other things being providing for equipment, providing for adequate buildings, the bunker gear, the breathing apparatus, all that other stuff, is that we're putting that into paramedic salaries because there aren't any volunteer paramedics. They're a non-existent animal, they're rare. And when I say that there are no unemployed paramedics and no volunteers, it doesn't mean that we don't have paramedics that don't give their services. It means they're employed in some form or fashion in some service. There's no reason for a paramedic with a valid patch that's active in the service and capable to be unemployed. There are plenty of job opportunities out there for that. So it's very difficult to get those folks when you need them in your greatest time of need. That's why we pay them. And right now, we're sending them all over the place. Calls have increased. Just for general calls of service, not to mention some of the calls that we're getting just for overdoses that have increased dramatically just for one. But in general, the population as it ages also has increases for those services. And we certainly put a lot of money in. Matter of fact, we're raising money to put into that fund in and above what the county provides. And it's very difficult when you're a small organization and with limited resources. Taking Allen, for instance, that doesn't have a natural partner to work with the paramedic program. They're keeping that service around for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on their dime. So they're probably at least doubling what we're putting in there. Now, there's background information in here from going back to FY13. When you get to the one, we did not sit before the council in 15 or 16 because of flat budgets, and 17. So FY15 was the last year we had any substantive increase, which was, I believe, only to the EMT grant. That was increased from, I believe, this is off the top of my head, 97,000 to 100,000. Now, there are some corrections, and there's some mistakes because I got lazy and just copied and pasted instead of going back all the way. So you'll see things like the LoSAP figure was extraordinarily high across those 3 years. That's incorrect because we had a $100,000 one-time payment into that account. That was when it was going to be a private investment account before the county switched over to just covering it in full. So when we get to the 2018, we can separate the Salisbury Fire Department part from that. That's a different topic. The grants to the 11 fire companies outside, we had requested the EMT grant to move to 2.2 million from 1.4, or not 1.4, excuse me, 1.1. The grants to the 11 companies at 1.1 million. The EMT, and again, this was a proposal to the executive. This is not the final. And the EMT workman's comp, and the total is shown there. We went through the volunteer fire companies. You will see that the workers' comp figure is not put down there because that actually comes from the county. Our death benefit, the LoSAP is indicated on your sheet at 120,000. The grants as follows: 1.4 million for the total grants to the individual fire companies. The hazmat, the 6,000, the 5,000 for fire prevention sinking fund. Again, with what we proposed was 420,000. Hepatitis at 5,000. And respiratory protection at 39,000. So those are the rough figures minus the workman's comp. The rest of what we have in here is included in what you already have, which is your line items from the executive's budget. You've already, I am sure, been over that extensively, so I won't go through all of that. The substantive increase was to the ambulance grant, which is discretionary. Certainly, we will use that to help offset some of our EMS salaries as appropriate, but it's more of a general use fund having to do with the EMS, has now been increased by 45,000. The sinking fund still holding at 30,000, fire grant at 100, EMT grant at 100,000 per company, workman's comp and respiratory protection.
So you had requested additional sinking fund.
Yes, to even it out. Now, there was 1 year where we were eliminated from the sinking fund during the height of the budget crisis, so we've still been catching up over a number of years. And the sinking fund, just for the record, is for vehicles, things that have a longer shelf life, vehicles, buildings, things like that.
But the executive's proposal is to keep you at the 30,000.
That's correct.
38. Yeah.
That's correct.
So when you had in parentheses increased 42,000 total, that's
That was all the companies.
the request that you were making.
That was the request we were making. I wanted you to see, the council to see exactly what we had proposed to the executive.
Questions from anyone?
I've got one.
Sure, Joe.
Maybe somebody can explain this to me again. When you do a mutual aid call to Salisbury, the only way you get paid for it is if you can bill the insurance company, is that correct?
EMS or fire.
EMS, excuse me, yeah, EMS.
Billing is the only thing that you get.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. But if Salisbury, under our current fire agreement, gets paid for any calls they make out into the county, is that correct?
Well, there was a letter that came out in 14 that said that they were charging extra fees to go out on EMS calls out in the county. I happen to have a copy of that. But since then, it came up in the county-city agreement meetings, and we were assured that that was supposedly done away with. Now, I don't have any way to prove or disprove
Right,
that.
okay.
They only get paid if they're first, if it's mutual aid, if they, run to Hebron, let's say, and it's mutual aid, they don't get paid for that. Is that right, Wayne?
They don't get paid by the county.
By the county, yeah. So mutual aid's, Salisbury is the same as everybody else. It's just first call, they get paid. Is that right, Wayne?
That's the way I read it in the agreement.
Okay.
So if we go to Salisbury, we just do our normal billing. There's no extra money that the city's paying us.
Right,
If the city comes and assists us, there's no extra money that the county's paying them.
okay.
But they'll still bill like they would
They
any
would
other
bill
call.
normally. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Eric, can you get closer to that mic?
So it does work out even, or well, it might not, depending on the amount of calls, which way the calls go, but
Right.
both are being treated the same way.
Yes.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Joe, if you'd like to see this,
Yeah,
this is
fine.
what,
Thank you.
there's a copy of the 2014, the schedule that they were charging extra above and beyond the billing for going calls out in the county. And I also included a copy of a resident of Delmar, who actually was out of state even and got charged the extra fees. That came up in the city-county agreement meetings, and we were assured by the chief and by the mayor. Actually, it was by the mayor that was going to be discontinued, but whether that has been discontinued or not, I don't know.
Now, I will say that we have a partnership, we being Pittsville, have a partnership with Parsonsburg to provide advanced life support coverage between the two communities. Mardell and Hebron have a similar arrangement. So while they may receive funding for them using an ambulance to go to the city of Salisbury or Hebron, the partner company receives nothing for providing the paramedic because we have a mutual agreement. So while they do get something for billings, part of that operation may not, which when we're all going a little bit into our budget or a lot into our budget in some cases to provide some of that paramedic service, there's some money's not being recouped. But we call it even because we get in turn a return service.
Question I have, and Wayne, this may be for you. The fire grant was listed as 100 per company unchanged,
Correct.
100,000 unchanged.
Correct.
But in the budget itself, it lists operating as 1411 in last year and 1111 this year. Of course, the difference being that 300,000. I don't know how they're saying it was unchanged, and yet we're saying there was 14 and then there's 11.
Yeah, let me explain that. Because in last year's budget, the fire service agreement with the city had not been concluded. So our funding to the volunteer companies for fire service are for the 11
Gotcha.
county companies.
I got you.
The fire service agreement with the city is based purely on a per-call arrangement,
Yeah.
so that there's no additional stipend. And to Marty's point, Marty's absolutely correct. During the discussions, both Chief Hoppus and Mayor Day assured us that on mutual aid calls, there would not be any premium charged by the city for mutual aid calls out to the other districts.
And you just simply bounce that 300 over to the airport.
Yeah,
Kind of.
that's not really what I did, but
Okay.
But that was a point of negotiation. If if we were going to fund the city on the basis of per call at agreed-upon rates, factored by insurance reimbursements, then that's the way you have to do it. If you have a hybrid, now you've just scotched it up again, and every year you're gonna have to be talking about, okay, what's the stipend going to be? What we wanted to do was put together a construct where it sustained itself, other than saying each year, look, what are the true, what are the market costs for each type call? What's the running rate on insurance recovery, so what's that come to? And we collectively agreed that that was the direction that we were going to go in. And the city agreed to that.
Okay. Yeah, the difference in the numbers, I wasn't sure, but as soon as you said it, I recognize that.
Right.
Thanks. Any other questions?
If an insurance company denies your charge, your rate for the ambulance, do you send the balance to collections?
Different companies have different policies, but so far as I know, I would say most don't. We usually absorb that cost. At least that's been my experience. Now, there may be some, as soon as I say that, there'll be one that says, oh no, we send it to a collection agency, but in my experience, that has not been the case.
Allen does not.
Alan does not. Another question. Throughout the county at the different fire stations, how many paramedics are on duty at any given time? Has anybody ever figured that out?
And throughout the county?
Yeah, like during the day.
I would say, well, there's,
I know there's shared services.
there's one
like
in
you
Hubbard,
said.
one in Delmar, one in Fruitland.
Alan.
There's one in Allen, there's one in Sharptown.
Sharptown
There's one in
doesn't share.
West Side. No, they
West Side,
don't
okay.
share. Parsonsburg and.
Parsonsburg and Pittsville, we share one. Willards and Powellville share one at night, but they have two on during the day.
Day.
I would say it's around nine on duty in a day.
They still have to depend on drivers.
Yes.
Well, there are some companies who have drivers.
Paid
like
EMTs.
Paid EMTs.
Okay.
Hebron provides a paid EMT, Fruitland provides a paid EMT, Delmar provides.
Plus the paramedic at the same time,
Plus
so
the
they have two
paramedic.
people there.
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
Pittsville does during the day only.
Okay.
And that's why there's some companies that are spending close to, between $400,000 and $500,000 for payroll, in a year. We get some back from billing, of course. There's a rate that we get back from that and what the county provides. And, there's companies that are, they're going into their own pockets to pay for their EMS program. And if you remember correctly, I think I sat in front of the council about 6 months ago and explained that and tried to reiterate that it's not fair to the fire companies that are having fundraisers to provide a service to the county that the county should be providing. Because the appropriations we get, which is fair, and with billing, it still doesn't cover the cost of a full-time unit.
Questions? So what is it, about am I reading this right, was it about $2 million that you felt that you should have had more that wasn't given to you?
That was in order to cover the additional paramedics, yes.
Right.
Were this a county program completely, the advanced life support portion, there may be some savings that could be done by combining different areas. This is the only fair way to do it that we have within the confines of our current arrangements. We're operating the vehicles, we're providing the place for the providers, we're providing the vehicles in some cases for them to go back and forth between stations, the chase units to cover the calls, and plus covering some of the costs for the paramedics, depending on the station. And that was the only fair way and equitable way across the board to make sure that everybody had the same opportunity.
And if I may add also, there's a large cost here recently with the changeover of our life packs. The equipment that we use has changed where they've had to be upgraded. So we've had to go from the Life Pack 12s to the Life Pack 15s, and at $22,000 a piece. And if you have 2 units, you got to have 2 of them. It's quite an outlay of money. And there's some companies actually that can't even afford to change over, and they don't service those units anymore. So they're procrastinating as long as they can with the Life Pack 12s, and that doesn't include the systems that are changing now, the electronic stretchers, the battery assist stretchers and things like that are pretty much getting to be the standard of the industry.
Well, MIMS always had grants and special funding available for these life packs and AEDs. Is anybody tapping into that anymore?
We do as much as possible, but they're emergency type grants, and they're not giving them out to everybody who asked for them in the past. Now it's done for the neediest companies.
Actually, our Life Pack 15s, the last one we bought, were 30 apiece. And the reason that they don't service them after a certain period of time, the electronics degrade in them because part of we're going to talk paramedic for a minute, part of the Life Pack 15 is the ability to shock a patient that is in cardiac arrest should they need it. So when you're delivering that kind of energy through those electronics, eventually they degrade. Even the company doesn't know at what rate they degrade, but they'll tell you at 5 years you're starting to get into that warning area. So somebody who's operating with an older piece of equipment is probably fine if it hasn't delivered a certain number of shocks. But at some point, we don't know precisely what that energy is going to be delivered when we need it, and that's why they need to be replaced periodically.
And a current standard that's being upgraded now is the assist for CPR, the Lucas devices. I think they're about 17,000 a piece or so.
The 13.
13.
13,000.
And so that's going to be a standard also that most companies are having to bear.
Can you explain what a Lucas device is?
It's a battery-assisted CPR piece of equipment. It does it automatically without having actually manpower to.
So you don't need more manpower if you
That's
have
correct.
one of those.
It provides a more systematic, repetitious compressions, yeah.
The current standard on doing CPR is about 2 minutes per person. That's about what your effective range is before you need to switch, because it's it's an extremely tiring endeavor when you're pumping on somebody's chest for minutes at a time. And the most effective way to do that is about every 2 minutes to switch. Well, it requires a lot of people to assemble on the scene that are capable of doing CPR. And it does require an ENT to do that. But you still have to go through the yearly training. You have to have somebody physically fit enough to be able to do that. Particularly during the daytime, it becomes problematic. With this device, you do 1 to 2 cycles. It's 2 to 4 minutes while you assemble the equipment. You put this on, and then for the next 45. Yeah, we can go for quite a while without having to change over. And that machine just does the CPR for us. We can concentrate on doing other things and move them out. Now, the new research that hasn't even been delivered completely to the field is that sooner or later we will be doing CPR in a raised position. So that as you're sitting here, that's the way your blood flows the best. So eventually we're going to be sitting the patient up to do CPR. That's in the process of being rolled out in some of the more advanced jurisdictions nationwide. So you'll see that eventually where we won't have the capability of doing the prone CPR that we're doing now.
So EMS is an expensive business, as you know, Larry, and it's getting to be more expensive every year. We also have the expenses today of the IO needles, the IO systems, which is the IV system. That's $120 a use that we don't get reimbursed for.
The hospital's not replacing those.
No. So that's pretty much a standard for every cardiac arrest, and that gets at $120 a person, you know, I mean, with no reimbursement. It's an expense.
Do you bill for those items when you charge on an ambulance call?
We cannot.
You cannot bill for those items.
Not only do we not charge for them, in current protocol, not all cardiac arrests are transported. Used to be, we would load and go with all patients. If they were in cardiac arrest, we get in, get them out to the ambulance, go to the hospital. We can do in the field everything the hospital is going to do for them. So the movement to the ambulance, not in all cases, but in some cases, is detrimental actually to the care. So we'll now sit on location and do that. When we don't transport, we don't get a dime for that call. That's non-recoverable. The insurance company isn't going to cover for something we don't transport.
So you were saying if somebody goes into cardiac arrest, you go and resuscitate them or bring them?
We will work to resuscitate them.
Then you might not take them to the hospital at all?
No, there's a set of parameters when we get to a certain position in that where there's no chance for life anymore, we will stop right there and we do not transport that patient. That is in Maryland protocol. Now, that is a judgment on the scene that this patient is survivable and there's a variety of conditions. But yes, we're not transporting all patients going to cardiac arrest.
But the ones that survive, you transport to
Oh,
the hospital?
absolutely.
That's
And-
what I
and
was getting at.
there's a number,
That's
of parameters.
That's what I was getting at.
Well, cardiac arrest, there's,
Yeah, okay.
resuscitation becomes another section of the protocol.
Okay,
So
all right.
cardiac arrest, that meets the certain criteria,
Okay, that's what
we're
I-
not
that's what I was
transporting. Oh,
getting at.
yeah.
You were-
no.
I was
No,
under
we're
the
not letting them
impression-
drive to the hospital.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
On your.
No, we don't do that. But it does cover the question of cost, because there's a certain number of these procedures that we're doing and equipment that we're using. It's based on a transport system. When you transport, you get paid. If you don't transport, you don't get paid. Now, unfortunately, cardiac arrest is actually the one where we probably use the most expensive equipment, the cardiac monitor with the defibrillator part. When we're using the IO needle at $120 a piece. When we're using that device, because the patient is not circulating anything, their veins won't pop up, can't get an IV very well.
So is it against the law to charge for that, or is it just something you don't do?
It's just not built into the system.
It's not built into the system. We can't bill the insurance company for a patient that doesn't survive.
No, I'm talking about the ones that do survive.
The ones that do survive, absolutely, we do charge.
You do? Okay.
We do charge for the ride, but we can't charge for the equipment
Okay,
used.
so you don't charge for the equipment for the ones
right.
that do survive. Okay, that's what I was getting.
We balance that out across the number of calls, because there's a certain number of patients that we take that require very little intervention.
Move out of Parkersburg.
You're scaring him. So, I'm thinking, what, is it still like 30 minutes termination of efforts?
15 to 20.
So,
I usually use a benchmark of you need to do certain things before you get that far.
so if you loaded
Yeah.
the patient and took them to the hospital in that 15 or 20 minutes, you could bill.
You would, but that's not Maryland protocol. You know the difficulty of
Well, you
dealing
could
with
still
Maryland
do
protocol.
it.
You could do that,
Yes.
but actually, when you do that, the survivability may actually go down.
No, it's always a low survivability rate.
Yes, it is. There's a
So-
reason a person's heart stops.
So your request was an additional 1.1 million in the EMS category? Is that correct?
45 a station. 45 a station.
45
Okay.
per station, so that wasn't additional. It was originally 55,000 last year,
Okay,
and we've asked for an increase of 45,000.
an increase of 45?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, to bring it to 1.1 million.
Well,
And there's an increase of 3? Is that what I see?
yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out, because in your figures here, you had grants for 11 companies at 1.1, and then a separate EMT grant for 2.2.
That's correct.
That's what we asked for.
But in the executives, it's 1.1 under each of those, correct?
Correct.
So it's 1.1 less than what your request was?
Right.
Okay.
Again, we just wanted the council to see everything that we had presented
Right.
to the
I understand.
executives, so everybody knows what was, all the information's consistent.
But you feel that that extra 1.1 was really what was necessary, required, I mean, at the level of
For
service that you
the
guys are
salary
seeing?
purposes, yes, to completely cover what we were putting out there and to make the jurisdictions competitive pay-wise. Because and it's difficult in any rural community to be competitive with other jurisdictions. The paramedics will travel a long distance
Sure.
to get the jobs. And it's not that difficult
Yeah.
to do. Again, you don't see many paramedics standing on the unemployment line.
No, but I would also imagine it's a, I don't want to say a tougher job at all, but it's a different job in some
Yes,
municipalities and jurisdictions. And
Yes.
Baltimore City is a little bit different than.
each jurisdiction is different, and even
Sure.
within those jurisdictions, you have differences. But even within Baltimore City, and I've worked with people who have been paramedics in Baltimore City. Even in Baltimore City, there are neighborhoods that are completely different streets from one another.
Sure.
Now, obviously, those ambulances serve each of those jurisdictions, and neighboring jurisdictions run in there, but the differences between communities anywhere within the state, and even here in Wicomico County, is fairly dramatic in some instances.
Now,
So-
the increases that you're seeing in your EMS calls, where you're having to cover different territories, is that correlated to the opioid epidemic, or is that just?
There's some. The opioid epidemic, we've had opioid problems in our communities for a long time. It's much more pronounced now than it has been because the media attention's on it.
Sure.
We have seen an increase in those calls, but I can't attribute all of that to the increase in calls. We have an aging population here in
Okay.
Wicomico County. As folks age, they naturally have a few more medical problems and a few more instances where they call on us.
Okay.
We have instances in our community where we have calls for service. Some of them we bill for, some of them we don't because they're not transports. If we transport a person that fell but doesn't otherwise need any other medical attention, they say, well, I want to go get checked out at the hospital. We transport them, we get something from that. But we're also seeing a lot of instances where we have people who are living at home that in years past would have been in a nursing home, would have had some type of family there to care for them, and instead they've been transitioned to home. Well, when those folks fall on the floor at 8 o'clock at night, they're not able to call a home health care nurse, they call 911. So we'll take an ambulance and a crew and we'll go out there and we'll check on them. Are you injured? We'll help them up, get them settled in place. Well, that increases the call volume as well. So it's not all just because of opioids. Now, certainly that's had an impact. And we're seeing certainly more of them out in the community, but it's been there a while. This isn't a surprise to us.
It seems like they're, with the media attention that you spoke of, I know the governor's really focused on it. I didn't know
Yes.
if there were potentially grant opportunities coming forward from the state at some point that might help to cover some EMT expenses, but I know
Not
you just
so
had a
far.
big forum last week, so.
Not
to
so
keep an eye on.
far as we know, there hasn't been any proposal to put any more financial resources. I think on the state level, they're still trying to get a handle on it. And from my perspective, I would want to see some things that work before we go trying to do a bunch of new stuff or concentrate on, we just need to concentrate right now on working with the patients and working in the larger scheme to figure out how to fix the overall problem. Once these folks are on opioids, their brain is rewired to the point that they really need medical treatment to get past it. It's not, there's some treatments that you can do that are psychological, even spiritual, but when you talk about opioids, it's really something that needs to be done in a medical setting. And until we get that far beyond and that's well beyond our EMS scope, we're not going to fix it on our end. The only thing we can do is keep going out to these folks and trying to make sure they have the best outcome possible.
Thank you.
Does all the volunteer companies in the county offer, I don't know, I guess you call it a membership or whatever, where people pay in by the year subscription? Does everybody in the county offer that now, or?
Parsonsburg does. I think most companies do.
Okay, so they don't get billed for an EMS call?
Their insurance company gets billed. We will continue to bill the insurance company, but we won't bill an individual.
Okay.
And really with what we call soft billing, you may see a bill in the mail, but we don't demand payment from that. So the membership ensures that you don't see the bill at all. And for some folks that otherwise don't have insurance or have high deductibles, that membership covers that cost
I see.
of transport.
So from what you've given us, the ambulance grant increase was given to you,
Yes,
the sinking fund increase was given to you,
yes.
and the LoSAP increase was given to you.
The LoSAP being essentially a placeholder, but yes, correct.
Yes, okay. And I guess maybe the only thing, as far as what was requested, was the EMT grant.
That's correct.
Okay, all right. It took a while to try to put this.
Now, the
in
one
here.
thing I didn't see, and maybe Wayne did, was there was the one for the hazmat units. There was $6,000 total.
I think we kept that,
Okay.
I believe we kept
It's
that.
in here.
It wasn't separated in what I could find online. And the $5,000 for the
They're both in.
fire prevention.
Yeah, we kept that.
Okay.
We kept that.
Yeah, those two are both in here.
Did you say the sinking fund increase was not given, correct? The request? That was 330,000 funding level, and your request was 400 and,
Yeah, we asked for an increase, we didn't want it.
didn't get the increase, I don't think.
On what?
Not for the sinking
I think we
fund.
left that.
Yeah, we
fine.
left
Yeah, I think that
That
was
was
left
fine.
at 30.
The request was 420.
But the 30,000 per company is what you requested, right?
No, they requested 38,000 and some change. Yep.
See, because I'm a little confused here, because on the EMT grant, you requested 200 per company, right?
Yes.
Are these numbers in the same?
No, wait a minute. No, when we're talking about the sinking fund, that was at 30,000 per company. That was a 42,000 total increase. So it was funded at 30,000. That
Yes,
was what we
yes.
requested.
That
Yes.
was? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I had a lot of papers to go through to get back to it, but yes, that was as requested.
There's the 5 and the 6 right there.
Yes, okay. Yeah, that was the part that wasn't on the line. I wasn't sure.
Okay.
So I was looking at the one page, it says fire service requested budget FY 2018, and it says sinking fund 420,000.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
It really
Okay.
is, yeah. All right, any questions, anybody? We're good? All right, gentlemen, appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all the time.
Don't worry about that chair, we'll put it back.
Better wipe it off.
Yep.
Memorial Day.
So far, I think we're in favor of it. So, just need to work out details. Yeah.
Yeah, man,
And, you know,
well, call me.